What Really Happened with your host, Mike Rivero, because World War III is a really bad idea. Here is your host, Michael Rivero.
And aloha, America. Welcome to our show today. It's Thursday, October 6th, 2016. Sure happy it's Thursday. Sure happy it's Thursday. Sure happy it's Thursday. We have a lot of stuff to talk about today. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. Mike is in our control room, twiddling the dials, keeping us out of trouble, and ready to answer the phone when you call on in. This is one of the rare occasions when the corporate media and I agree on what the top story of the day is, and that's obviously Hurricane Matthew. This is a major, major storm that is coming on in. If you are anywhere along the coastlines, Florida, the Carolinas, Georgia, that whole area, if you're told to evacuate, you do it, because this is currently a Category 4, could even reach Category 5. And this one is just, it's all over the place. Now, this predicted track for the eye of the hurricane is now just slightly offshore. But hurricanes do not exist in a point. You can have hurricane effects for dozens of miles, 50 miles on either side. So be very, very, very careful. There's probably going to be blackouts. You need to have everything prepared. In fact, if you're not already prepared by now, you're probably already too late here. Now, if you're planning on traveling in that part of the country, you might want to be checking with the airlines here, because so far they've already canceled 2,500 flights ahead of the hurricane. That's in Florida, Georgia, the Carolinas. Again, more expected to happen. And, of course, when they start canceling flights, it can have a domino effect, because you can be at an airport hundreds and hundreds of miles away from the hurricane, but if the plane that is supposed to be your flight is grounded because of the storm and doesn't show up, well, then you can be stranded as well. So you need to keep an eye on your travel plans, going until whenever the storm is over. Now, there is a concern, because Florida, like Japan, has some of their nuclear power plants right on the coastline. And there are two that are an area of concern, St. Lucie and Turkey Point. And it looks right now the hurricane is going to come closest to St. Lucie. Now, the containment building is built to take huge amounts of wind. They're built to take the hit of a hurricane. The issue here is the storm surge. Now, a hurricane, like any major storm system, is an area of extreme low pressure, and the ocean underneath it gets sucked up by the low pressure, and that's what causes the storm surge to come onto the ground. And if the surge were to hit the reactor, there could be some issues there. It's not a tsunami, but could have the same absolute effects, so need to be keeping look on that. And Bill Clinton is already out there begging more donations for the Clinton Foundation to help the poor people of Haiti who have been devastated by this hurricane. The man has no shame whatsoever. All right, let's grab a couple of phone calls real quick. And again, I'm going to ask you to kind of, control yourselves a little bit, because we got a lot to cover. Jeff in Toronto, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. I just wanted to give a special shout-out to my cousin who's out in college just outside Daytona Beach, Florida, so my thoughts are with him. I was away for a few days. I haven't listened to your show, Mike. The last show that I listened to, you hadn't confirmed it yet. It was about the the possible evidence of voter fraud, or like the ballots that were found in Ohio or something like that. I was just wondering if you had confirmed or were able to find out that was actually a legitimate story or not.
Well, I contacted the election board for that county. They said the story is a hoax, but again, given how crooked our entire political system is, I'm not sure about that. But there is certainly plenty of other election fraud going on that has been confirmed and is being investigated, and we're going to be talking about that toward the bottom of the political news.
Okay, yeah, I was just about to ask you that next, if you had any other confirmed reports of anything like that, because I know the pre-voting is starting later.
Yeah, and the dead and the illegals are already voting in the early voting. So, vote early and often for Hillary Clinton. Hillary Rodham Clinton. That's her new name. Hillary Rodham Clinton.
She's got the dead vote going for her.
Yes,
so,
that's true. And of course they couldn't show up for the rallies or buy her book or any of that other stuff, but they can be counted on to vote, 20, 30 times each.
Well, I was listening to the Jeff Rentz show, and he thought more likely than not that vote fraud story in Ohio was bunk, but I wasn't sure if you were able to confirm it. But,
no, I didn't get a confirmation.
Of it.
Yeah, I didn't get a confirmation on that. One of the things that makes it look like it is junk is the photo of the individual with the boxes appears to have been copied from an earlier source. And it may be that this story was put out there to be discredited so that the Hillary Clinton campaign can say, oh, another story about election fraud over here. Well, remember the one in Ohio turned out to be nonsense.
Yeah.
You know, and that's part of the disinformation stuff.
Yeah, that's poisoning the well, isn't it?
Well, it's maintaining a state of tactical confusion, I guess, would be a good one. Thank you for the call, Jeff. We're going to let you go and talk to Dustin in New Jersey. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind? Oh, and before you say anything, we got to do our shout-out to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining our network. Go ahead, Dustin.
Hi. I want to let you know that tomorrow the Russia's carrier should be there, and they're actually sending 1 to 3 missile boats. The small ones that carry the Granite anti-ship missile system.
There are 2 of them already there, and a third one is on its way.
And, Mike, I watched the interview with the Ministry of Defense, and basically he said, if you kill any Russian servicemen, they're pretty much, it's going to be World War III. That's what it come down to saying, because that's who's manning, you know.
And, of course, the response from the Pentagon is, yee-haw! You know, more money from the American people and everything. What worries me is Obama seems to be taking a very cool tone to all of this. I think he has been advised by some of his top military experts that the U.S. may not be able to win this one. And it would hand a defeat to the U.S. that would be the end of the war agenda and the end of our economy. But unfortunately, you've got all these loose cannons over at the Pentagon, like Ash Carter, who are just drooling to have a war, and they don't care how much it costs in other people's money and children. Yeah, they live for that war, and Hillary's just another one just like them.
Yeah, people just don't understand. It's a different era. It's a missile and drone war. We talked about that already. You know,
well, you know, I think the area we need to be thinking about is we ended World War II with nuclear weapons. We're probably going to start World War III with nuclear weapons. And remember, the U.S. has already abandoned their doctrine of no first use, and they're openly talking about first strike nuclear attack on Russia.
All right, thanks a lot, Mike.
All right, thanks an awful lot. Now, getting on back to the political campaign, apparently Donald Trump had a meeting with the CEO of Ford Motor Company, Bill Ford. What an amazing coincidence. He's got the same name as the company he works for. And out of that meeting, as you know, Donald Trump was very critical of all companies who are sending their work and their jobs to other countries. Ford Motors, following the meeting with Donald Trump, announced it's bringing 100% of all labor production of the Ford Bronco back to the United States, and as a little additional icing on the cake, they've said that if they are going to be doing any manufacturing overseas, they will not be cutting any American jobs to do it. This will all be added new jobs, and I'm sure once Donald Trump is president, he'll be able to say, yeah, we're going to go ahead and bring the jobs back here to the United States. All you got to do is change the tax code. The reason companies are sending our jobs to other countries is because the tax code was written during the Bush administration to make it more profitable for American companies to send their jobs to other countries. And all they got to do is reverse that tax code, and those corporations will be in a rush to bring those jobs back here. It can be done. But sending our jobs to other countries was part of this globalist, let's even all of the economies out, let's even all the societies out, so that there's no one place has an advantage over any other, and then we can drop the borders and set up a golden throne to planet Earth. And then, of course, there'll be a real-life Game of Thrones over who gets to plant their butt on that particular chair. Now then, Donald Trump has chosen Myron Ebell to lead the transition for the Environmental Protection Agency. And that is a very significant choice because this guy is very skeptical of this whole human-caused global warming nonsense, as well as we should all be. And it's yet another reason to vote for Donald Trump. Because they're still out there, with, it's warm. There was an article came out the other day about how Earth today is warmer than it's been in the last 100,000 years, and we're on the verge of disaster unless you pay carbon taxes and give us your obedience. Meanwhile, in the real world, winter has arrived in central Montana in early October, and they're reporting, it's a light dusting of snow, but it is snowing. Remember back in 2000, they said snowfalls are a thing of the past? They were wrong. The original Farmer's Almanac said it's going to be an early, hard winter. They're right, as usual. And I remember when I was a kid growing up in New Hampshire, we never had snow on Halloween. It was kind of 50-50 if we were going to have snow by Thanksgiving. And snow is coming early again. Snowfall warnings have been issued for Saskatoon and parts of Saskatchewan. And apparently the United Nations has come to the conclusion Donald Trump is going to win this election next month because they're rushing through that climate treaty. They want that over and done with before Donald Trump can come on in and say, let's take another look at this thing. And that worries me, this tendency to rush things through before Donald Trump can take office, including the war. Meanwhile, following the vice presidential debates, first of all, Kaine just did not impress a lot of people. And a lot of commentators are pointing out this ludicrous dodge he did when Mike Pence was trying to talk about the corruption of Hillary Clinton, the State Department, and the Clinton Foundation. And Kaine keeps interrupting, not going to let him talk. The moderator's clearly on Kaine's side on this one. And he basically comes and said, did you know that Osama bin Laden was still alive when Hillary Clinton became Secretary of State? And everybody's saying, what the heck does that have to do with Pence said? And of course the answer is absolutely nothing. He's trying to pull the focus onto the fact that Osama bin Laden was supposedly alive when Hillary Clinton took office. Of course, he wasn't. The real bin Laden died in December of 2001 of Marfan syndrome, I think, if I recall correctly. And all the Osamas since then were a fake, including the guy that they got at Abbottabad. But that's what Kaine was doing, and people weren't buying it. They weren't falling for it. And Trump's numbers have taken a jump after the vice presidential debate. Pennsylvania, Trump is at 50%, Clinton at 46%, Virginia, Trump 50%, Clinton 45%. In an overall poll on all 50 states, and mind you, we're talking about polls not under the control of the obedient corporate media, Donald Trump is winning all across the country. Now, more and more information is coming out about that Clinton Foundation, and for all her tough talk about Russia this and Russia that we've been on the campaign trail, it turns out the Russian oligarch, Vexelberg's Renova Group, has been financing the Clintons. It's unbelievably corrupt, and it's another reminder that you cannot take anything Hillary Clinton says at face value, because she keeps getting caught cheating. Now, at Hillary Clinton Town Hall in Haverford, Pennsylvania, they supposedly picked this 15-year-old girl, chosen at random, to ask a question of Hillary Clinton. And it turned out the randomly chosen 15-year-old girl was not randomly chosen. She's a child actor, Brennan Leach, and her father just happens to be Pennsylvania Democratic State Senator Dalen Leach. And of course, Dalen is supporting Hillary Clinton for president. It was a fake. It was a complete joke. More confirmation has come on out that Hillary Clinton was given the questions for the first debate a week ahead of time. A little bit of connivance between NBC and Hillary Clinton. And Steve Harvey recently had Hillary Clinton on the show and surprised her with pictures of her youth. And they're showing the pictures. Oh, wasn't she a cute little kid? And Hillary's going, oh, my goodness, I'm so embarrassed, and all the rest of it. That, too, was completely scripted. New leak from DC Leaks. The interview was actually scripted by Hillary's campaign in concert with Steve Harvey's producers. It was not spontaneous. It was not genuine. They're trying to convince you that she's a really warm and caring human being, and she isn't. It's a complete facade. And by the way, over at the State Department, they're still trying to explain just how it is that they lost this smoking gun memo that proved insider trading between Hillary Clinton's inside information in the State Department and her son-in-law, Mark Mezvinsky, who apparently, even with the advantage of insider information, still managed to destroy his own company. So, now Citizens United, everybody's stepping in where Assange disappointed. Assange was saying, we're going to do this, we're going to do this. Nothing happened. And so Guccifer 2.0 came out with some information. We're still going through that. It's insane there. Citizens United has just released 198 emails between the Clinton Foundation and the State Department by Cheryl Mills. And it only confirms there was no line at all between Clinton's private ventures and her work as Secretary of State. She leveraged official State Department events as opportunities to solicit more funding for the Clinton Foundation from international donors and even encouraged President Obama to help. In one of the emails, she asks one of her colleagues to urgently set up a new 501c charity tied to the Clinton Center in order to solicit donations from G8 attendees. And this was done just days before the G8 summit began. It's just amazing. Now, there's an interesting little article that came out of the CBC. Should black people sit out the U.S. elections? And the article is commenting on how more and more black leaders are stepping up and saying the Democrats have never delivered on their promises to the black community. And maybe it's time to sit this out. Well, don't do that, because it leaves an unused voter registration to be used by the vote riggers. Blacks should be voting for Donald Trump. You may not like what he says, but you know he means it. And even the leaders of Black Lives Matter are out there saying, Hillary's saying all the right things, and we have no way to know that she's going to do anything about it. And that's exactly the problem. Now, it's starting to get a little bit interesting right now, because outside of the remaining two debates, Hillary Clinton's schedule for the next 2 weeks, the height of the presidential race, is all but empty. She only has one scheduled event. And people are wondering if her health problems are worsening. If her people steal the election, she may have to be wheeled up to that inauguration in a wheelchair or a gurney. Now, over at the Daily Mail, they're running this story about how Bill Clinton literally worked to bushwhack Attorney General Loretta Lynch at the airport and extort a promise Hillary wouldn't be prosecuted. And apparently some of the witnesses who saw Loretta Lynch afterwards said she was sweating over whatever it is that Bill Clinton told her, and may have promised her she's going to go on being Attorney General, or may have warned her about things that happened to enemies of the Clintons in small aircraft and suburban parks. But he definitely put the fear of Hillary into Loretta Lynch. And even if Comey had gone ahead and recommended indictments, Loretta Lynch would have blocked them. And apparently, Loretta Lynch was still furious with James Comey for going down that list of Title 18 violations. And by the way, as a postscript, James Comey acknowledges Title 18 does not require intent. Negligence is a valid cause for legal action. And his excuse is, well, it's hardly ever been used before. And that's why we're not going to do it now. I mean, it's ridiculous. And the corporate media, online and real world, they're not even trying to hide the fact that they are censoring things to support Hillary Clinton. Twitter has suspended the account of Trump supporter Ricky Vaughn. And I'm getting emails that my website is now being blocked in some parts of the country. So we're down to the wire here, and it's getting ugly. The Conservative Tribune over in well, we got to take a break for commercial, and I'll finish the story when we come on back from these words from our sponsors. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. And the Conservative Tribune is reporting on what happened with this newspaper, the Arizona Republic. When they gave their endorsement to Hillary Clinton, they got flooded with angry phone calls from their readers. Subscriptions are being canceled. There's a real grassroots loathing of Hillary Clinton, and everyone understands the corporate media is trying to shield for her, prop her up, and they're expressing their anger, and that is a good thing. That is a very good thing. Now, going on back to the vice presidential debates, Tim Kaine made a comment about supporting more gun control. That obviously did not go over very well with a lot of voters, especially independents and undecideds. And the Clinton campaign came on out, and I am not kidding you. They came on out and said that supporting more gun control means you support the Second Amendment. You know, if you're okay with us taking your guns away, it means you support gun freedom. I mean, that's, how much more Orwellian can you get than that? War is peace, freedom is slavery, ignorance is strength, cooling is warming, and gun control is gun freedom. They have to be just desperate to be trying things like that. Everybody's going to be scratching their head and saying, this makes absolutely no sense at all, and it doesn't. Now, let's get back to the issue of vote fraud. It is out of control. Professor John Banzif is out there issuing a warning how hackers can sabotage the 2016 election without even needing to change any ballots. And the issue here is how it is now known that computerized voting records in more than 20 states have already been hacked into. And remember, during the primaries, there were all these people who wanted to go in and vote for Bernie Sanders, and their registrations had been changed. Party affiliation was different, or it had the wrong address, so that the election workers could say, I don't think this is you, and they would just kick them out, and they didn't get to vote. So, if your state has an online verification of your voting registration, you need to check it right now. Because we have been seeing registrations in several states being altered to prevent people who are not voting for Hillary Clinton from not voting at all. I mean, it's just obvious. This is the crookedest election in our history. Dead people and illegal immigrants are being registered to vote all over America. There's an FBI investigation down in Virginia where they caught this one guy who registered 19 dead people so that he could vote for Hillary Clinton 19 times. And he was only caught because one of the dead people had passed away only recently, and his family received this note congratulating them for registering. And they were very upset, and they complained, and that's how they found that guy. And what they don't know is how many more Hillary supporters are out there registering dead people by the 10s and 20s and 30s so that they can vote for Hillary multiple times. Same thing's going on out in Colorado. They're saying it's a very serious voter fraud issue. Votes are being cast in multiple elections under the names of dead people. And let's see, Palmdale, California, same thing. Hundreds and hundreds of dead voters are voting in the elections out in California. At least 86 non-citizens have been registered voters in Philadelphia, and almost half of them even voted in at least one recent election. Non-citizens are not allowed to vote. And the big problem is, a lot of them have already participated in the early voting system, or somebody using their names and registrations. So it's already tainted the system. Indiana, we talked about this the other day, state police have raided a voter registration agency that was caught in a voter fraud scheme that spanned 9 separate counties in Indiana. The police are describing this as actually it's extremely alarming. It's just right out there. Hillary knows she cannot win this election honestly. She's trying to steal it. We must stop her. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. Here we're going to go to the phones. Ken in Fort Worth. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, hey, there's one. Go to YouTube and put in Hillary Clinton exposed. You ever see that video?
There's a whole bunch of them that carry names, variations on the theme.
Yeah, that one, and you put Hillary Clinton, Hillary arrested.
I'm sorry?
You look, you see a pair of handcuffs behind her.
No, I don't see that. I don't see that.
You don't see it?
No, I don't see it, and nobody's going to arrest her.
She touched indoors to get in there. They stuffed her in there for some reason.
Well, they stuffed her in there because they stuffed her in there because she was falling over. She couldn't stand up anymore, and they needed to get her out of the eyesight of the public there.
You never touched the door frame to get in the thing. They did let her stuff her in there.
Okay, Ken, thank you. Ken, thank you very much. We're going to let you go here. Boy, the Hillary shills are getting desperate. Steve in Massachusetts, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. I want to continue talking about Hillary and about the upcoming debate.
Yes.
You know what Trump really needs to do is hit Hillary where she's strongest, you know. She says she's a champion of women's rights. Well, go after her in that. Say, you know what? Your husband has harassed, slept with all these women, perhaps raped a couple here and there, and you came after these women like a bulldog. You called them bimbos and sluts. Said, this is your champion of women's rights, someone who would do something like that. You know, that's where you need to hit her.
Yeah, he absolutely does. And, again, build that sense of distrust with women that's already being a problem with Hillary and the black voters. She's saying what they want to hear, but they don't believe her. Paul Joseph Watson is out there saying there are at least 6 more women that Bill Clinton was having affairs with who have yet to publicly surface because they've been intimidated by Hillary Clinton. We know that while Hillary Clinton was serving as Secretary of State, Bill was having 3 simultaneous, ongoing, long-term love affairs with these various women.
You know, you have to say, you know, women, where's your dignity? You know, you get your husband is sleeping, not with 10s, not with, 20. He probably slept with hundreds of women and you're still with him? What does that say about your moral character?
Well, the marriage of Bill and Hillary Clinton was purely for political expedience. They clearly don't really like each other all that much. And as far as all the women who are ready to, hop on top of Bill Clinton, you have to remember what Henry Kissinger said about all the young hotties that were following him around. His power is the ultimate aphrodisiac, and it's absolutely true. And it is a sad commentary in our society that if you come across looking like you're powerful and rich and wealthy, you're going to have a lot of women following you around.
Yeah, we all know the relationship is fake, but they're still putting on a facade like they're in love with each other, and that's the part that gets me.
Yeah, well, it's all politics and expedience.
Yeah, that's all I wanted to say. I think you really should go after her, the next debate and really go for the jugular,
Well, I'm going to disagree on that. I think he should go right for the corruption, the Clinton Foundation, and the State Department, because with these recent releases from Citizens United and Gucci for 2.0, Hillary is very vulnerable there. Americans are reading the information. They're reading the emails. They know this was going on. And that is Hillary Clinton's point of vulnerability. I mean, she's in serious, serious trouble there. Do you think Hillary's people would be doing all this registering of dead voters and everything if they thought she actually had a chance at an honest election? They know they're in trouble.
He should bring that. Who was it? He was the guy in Honduras who really spoke out against Clinton and how his country didn't get the money.
That was Haiti. That was the president of Haiti's Senate. Yeah, you're right. He should, assuming he hasn't been found dead in Fort Marcy Park.
Yeah. Well, let's hope not. But yeah, I mean, having him on your side and, having somebody who can actually speak out.
Well, he wouldn't be allowed to speak during the debate. But I think Donald Trump should put Juanita Broaddrick right in that front row to just try and unnerve Hillary Clinton, assuming Hillary Clinton can actually still see that far, which appears to be another issue.
Yeah, well, that's something completely different. Who knows what's going to happen in this debate, but I'm looking forward to it. Even though I can't stomach to watch her, I might have to put her on mute and just watch him.
Well,
she gets me so frustrated just watching her. I find myself yelling at the TV all the time.
Yeah, and unfortunately, unlike the view screens in 1984, they're not listening to you through the TV, or at least I don't think they are. But in any event, they're not going to let Hillary hear any of this stuff. All of her little enablers around here are going to say, "Oh, America loves you. You're ahead in the polls." Yeah, like anybody who works for a politician, Hillary's people are telling her what they think Hillary wants to hear, rather than what she needs to know.
Yeah, and you wonder why she's not 50 points ahead in the poll?
Oh,
nobody likes it.
I loved it when she actually got angry and said, "Why am I not 50 points ahead in the poll?" Because we don't like you. It has nothing to do with you being a woman. It has to do with you being a crook. I mean, I imagine Richard Nixon's got to be laughing his head off because he's not the biggest crook in American politics anymore.
She thought she was just going to be handed. It's going to be. That whole Bernie Sanders thing, I don't even know if he was a true candidate. I think you said, put this old man against you, you have an easy victory, then, you'll be shooting for president.
Well, Bernie Sanders was getting all that support for the same reason that Donald Trump is, because everybody is sick and tired of these, Clinton-Bush duopoly. And there was that wonderful description that came out. Donald Trump is a giant middle finger from the American people to the establishment. And the same thing was true of Bernie Sanders.
Yeah, it's just, it needs to stop. I mean, enough is enough.
I agree. 30 years of a narcocracy is enough. They've made their money. Let's shut it down and start working to make America for the American people again, because it's long, long, long overdue. All right, Steve, thanks a lot for the phone call. Going to let you go. Going to take a quick call from John in Texas. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike. I hope you're doing good.
I'm doing okay. I'm trying to keep my blood pressure down again because,
Well, hopefully it stays down, Mm-hmm. Less stress, the better.
Yes.
We all know that. But hopefully you can take me, hopefully you can take me over during the commercial if I can't finish this.
Well, no, we got a lot of time, but just because you get into it.
Oh, yeah, I wanted to come to that point on, how you said that the U.S. is going to be looked at like Nazi Germany. And the reason why I say that, and I agree with you on that from experience, is I went to Iraq in 2007. Mm-hmm. And what do you think the people back then saw of the Germans when they walled off Warsaw and put in the you know what I mean? Yeah, put in the ghetto and everything. Well, the reality is that most of the German people didn't know what the German government was doing, just like the American people don't know what the American government is doing. The difference is that we have an independent media and a peer-to-peer communication system. If there had been the equivalent of an internet in the 1940s Germany, Hitler would have remained a failed artist, and that would have been pretty much the end of it. There was a group that was trying to get the word out. They called themselves the Order of the White Rose, and they had printing presses, and they were making pamphlets, and they would basically run along the rooftops in cities and just throw these pamphlets on the ground. Ultimately, they were caught by the Nazis and beheaded. But there are people who know what's going on, and they're trying to call attention to it. And we do need to remember the Order of the White Rose, because they were right, and the government was wrong. And had the German people been willing to listen to the Order of the White Rose, they would have avoided the disaster that Germany eventually became. Well, I don't think they could have avoided it, because it was an inevitable, just like it's inevitable now. Even though we have people who know, I think that's what the downfall is, because Germany and Russia destroyed Poland. Poland was massacred, even though they were going to help out, even though they were trying to plan an attack against Germany too. But beyond that, I think that's why you see the way our society is, from the elections to the media, and it's just like almost like a downgrading. It's like they're trying to drag America to the dirt, and it's just like the American people might not know, but the rest of the world don't look at us.
Oh, they do. They do. Many years ago, I worked on a film project down in Australia, and after working hours, I'd hang out with them and we'd talk politics about what was going on. This is all the way back during think it was Bill Clinton's second term in office, and I was talking about what was going on, and my Australian hosts paid me kind of a left-handed compliment by saying, you know, for an American, you really know what's going on in your country. And I can understand why that was the perception of the rest of the world, because the rest of the world was seeing what was going on, but the American people were being kept dumbed down by that corporate media. It was very close to being a perfect dictatorship, where the dictatorship was in complete and total control, and the people being dictated to didn't realize it. They still thought that they were free. They still thought that they had some control over the government through the elections process. That had all been erased, and only an illusion was being maintained. I think one of the reasons that the Matrix franchise of movies was such a huge success is that people understood at some level it is a metaphor for where we are today. We look at these little flat panel screens and displays and we think that's the real world, and it isn't.
But do you really think the American people are that, I guess, ignorant of the facts? Because I know I was, but I joined when I was 16, and I'm 06, and the recruiters came to the school and everything, and they promised us bonuses, and it's just we did the same thing, you know. We walled off the neighborhoods and stuff like that, you know.
Yeah, I know.
I remember.
I know. There was a lot of bad stuff done. Anyway, listen, John, I'm going to have to let you go. I got a lot of talking points I need to get to today. So we're going to let you go and do a short phone call with Mike in South Carolina. And the first thing I'm going to ask you, Mike, is are you all hunkered down for the hurricane?
Yes, I'm a little bit away from about 3 hours, but everybody from Florida all the way up through the Carolinas is they're anticipating quite a bit. And, this morning on the current news, local news, that they were talking about Charleston. If it gets hit bad, it just might be another New Orleans. So,
well, you know, stockpile water, because it's going to take FEMA another week to get in there and actually accomplish anything.
Yeah, but they got to hire the people in there first to start moving them. We have got a lot of about 200 school buses came from what they call upstate. It went all the way down there 3 hours away to help evacuate about 1 million people.
Yeah, so, last figure I heard was 1.5 million. Yeah, it's going to be bad. It's going to be bad. So I wish you guys the best.
Well, thank you very much. I called in to let you know something, another talking point if you haven't gotten to this real quick. Local news this morning said that O'Bangme and company up at the White House are, because of the problems we're having in all the cities and too many people getting shot, that we don't have a diversified police squad or police unit yet. So what they're doing is under EEOC, and get this, Mike, under EEOC, they're changing the requirements for hiring police officers. They no longer will require a criminal background check, and they will no longer require a citizenship background check. Can you believe that?
That is just insane, and you know that's right out of that's right out of A Clockwork Orange. You know, where these street gang members grow up and they join the police force and they go on beating the heck out of people that they encounter, but now they're protected by the uniform and the badge.
Well, just think of a cop stopping you on the side of the road and having that background. He walks up to you, pulls his gun, and says, "I want all your money."
Well, they're already doing that with the civil forfeiture laws. Mike, I'm going to let you go here again. We're going to start with John in Barbados and probably have to go through the commercial break. John, what's on your mind? John, are you there?
Hello, Mike.
There you are. Okay. I was beginning to think the hurricane. Yeah. How did Barbados fare with this storm? I think you were a little south of the track.
It went over the top of us, but it wasn't a hurricane at that time.
Okay. Are you okay? So what's on your mind?
Okay, I'm looking at this anti-Saudi suit law.
Mm-hmm.
And remember what happened to Germany after World War II, where IG Farben, the manufacturers of Zyklon B, he was hanged.
Mm-hmm.
He was found guilty. I wonder if Boeing and Raytheon and Lockheed Martin CEOs are wondering what's going to happen to them, and do they feel the rope around their necks already? because this is a good distinct possibility if America loses this war. And,
well, I don't know about the CEOs. I mean, first of all, the CEOs of companies like Boeing and Lockheed, they're making weapons for war that are considered legitimate, whereas the claim that Zyklon B was used for this horrible war crime, it was the justification for hanging the head of IG Farben. But you need to understand the reality, which is that Zyklon B is an insecticide, and it's actually still in use today. And it's a fumigant that is used to kill body lice, which was the primary means of transmission of the typhus epidemics that were sweeping across Nazi Germany toward the end of the war. And they were just, using it to fumigate the clothes, to delouse the people. And by the way, it wasn't just the prisoners. The camp guards and everybody were going through to get the gas treatment to get the lice off of them to stop the typhus outbreaks. There was somebody in Germany, I think it was about 4 or 5 years ago, voluntarily shut himself into a closed space with Zyklon B, stayed in there for an hour, came out, was perfectly okay.
Well, my opinion might be different to yours because Lockheed C-130s were used to obliterate that hospital in Kunduz, which is a war crime.
I concede that point. And, in the end, if the U.S. loses the war, they're not even going to be CEOs anymore. They're going to go from being rich people to being poor people, and frankly, that's a worse punishment than being hanged, because nothing hurts a money junkie more than having to live like a poor, ordinary American. So, do you have more that you want to share?
Yes.
Okay.
Hurricane Matthew.
Then hang on until after the commercial break. We'll be right back. Hello, hi, America. Welcome back to our show. And before we go back to John in Barbados, a little update on Hurricane Matthew. Apparently, the tropical storm that was a little further out to sea, Nicole, has now reached hurricane force. And looking at the projected course tracks, there actually is a possibility these storm systems could combine. And if you remember the book and then later the movie, The Perfect Storm, what caught that fishing boat out there was when 3 storms combined in the North Atlantic, and it was just a monster. So at this point, they're saying by next Tuesday, Wednesday, these storms could be merging, and who knows what the heck is going to happen after that. So we're going to get back to John in Barbados. And John, I think we're dealing with a very long delay on the connection today, so let's just go slowly and not step on each other.
Okay, Michael, right. When this storm passed over Barbados, it was only a tropical wave. It didn't really pick anything. The only thing it did was drop about 4 to 5 inches of rain, and it flooded my swimming pool. But now it dropped in power when it went over Haiti and Gitmo in the southern part of Cuba. But now it's picking up, and according to what I've been reading of late, is that it's gone back up to a Category 4 hurricane, and could maybe increase even further because it's over the very warm waters of the Bahamas.
Yeah, and don't forget, the further north it goes, the more powerful Coriolis effect is going to be as well.
Yeah. I just want to be cynical. This is this karma for the destruction, America's destruction of Afghanistan and Iraq and Libya and Syria,
Well, if you take it together with the sudden resurgence of the quake storm in California around the Salton Sea, that's got them all worried that there's a big quake coming on out there. And who knows? But bad weather does happen. We've had a couple of really bad storms out here in Hawaii, but thankfully they've always wound up missing Oahu because we're this little tiny dot, and hurricanes have lousy aim. But when you're an entire continent, it's going to hit somewhere, and that's what's happening. And again, we have every reason to be very concerned about everybody who's living along those coastlines right now because of the severity of the storm, the fragile nature of our current infrastructure, and the proven historical tendency for the government to act far too late and too weakly in terms of really taking care of the American people. I understand they're even nervous about some of the structures at Disney World possibly suffering damage from this storm.
Well, the problem with this storm, it's several hundred miles across. It's enormous.
Yes.
And now this second, Nicole, is coming in, which may change the track of Matthew.
Yeah, I don't think they have a computer model for this at all. All right, John, we got to take a break for station identification. Thank you very much for the phone call. We're going to be back with more news after these few words. Hi, America. Welcome back to our show. Hour number 2. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443, but only call if it's important because we got a lot of stuff to talk about here. And we're going to move into the war zones right now. Russia has ramped up airstrikes on the U.S.-backed terror groups, including al-Nusra, which the United States pointedly was not going after. A lot of people thinking that al-Nusra was sort of the understudy for ISIS and al-Qaeda. When ISIS and al-Qaeda are destroyed, al-Nusra will step up and continue the proxy war against Bashar al-Assad. But Russia is getting very good intelligence, and they're hitting the headquarters of these U.S.-backed groups, and they're targeting the leaders as well as they should. Now, the Syrian army has announced they're going to reduce their airstrikes in Aleppo to open up a corridor to give civilians space to leave and get on out. Now, there's a problem with that. We are hearing from within Aleppo that the U.S.-backed terror groups are saying if anybody tries to leave Aleppo, the families they leave behind will be killed. Because the U.S.-backed terror groups are trying to use those civilians as human shields, and of course the U.S. government is trying to use the civilians as an excuse to say Russia must stop bombing our hired, paid terrorists right now. And the tough talk is ramping up. According to Sputnik News, the U.S. has stated they're willing to do whatever it takes to prevent Assad from liberating Aleppo. And at least they're using the correct terminology, liberating Aleppo. In the Western media, they're calling it the fall of Aleppo. It's falling back under control of Syria's government. What a horrible thing that is. I don't know, when Abraham Lincoln brought the Confederacy back in, everybody thought that was a good thing. And the U.S. is already out there proving that they are going to play tough. A U.S.-led coalition fighter jet, actually plural, jets, have bombed a residential neighborhood in Aleppo, killing civilians, including children. It's a campaign of terror. Now, as I mentioned to that caller that called in earlier, Russia has now deployed a third missile ship to the Mediterranean. The Russian Ministry of Defense is warning the U.S.-led coalition not to go anywhere near the Syrian military, not to bomb them like they did a couple of weeks ago, saying that the S-300 and S-400 missile systems are in place and operating right now this second. And Russia is stating they will take down any American aircraft or rocket that is targeting the Syrian military. And of course, I'm sure the U.S. government would look upon that as an opportunity. Oh, Russia shot down one of our planes. The war is on. Huzzah, huzzah, huzzah. Now, as usual, the propaganda machine is up there trying to demonize Bashar al-Assad, say, oh, he's bombing hospitals in Aleppo. His army is destroying all these hospitals and schools and all the civilian infrastructure. And Assad has come on out with some common sense. How does this help me and my government to destroy this infrastructure? You'd think the U.S. would have learned from that embarrassing humiliation they suffered over the claim that Assad was using sarin gas. Remember that one a couple of years ago? The U.S. was out there. Obama and John Kerry were out there saying that Bashar al-Assad was using sarin gas on his own Alawite supporters right in front of the United Nations chemical weapons inspectors, literally on the day they arrived. And of course, smart people, which is all of you listening to this show, said, why would Assad do something that's stupid? And Obama and Kerry sat there going, we have no idea. But we know that he did it. And ultimately, of course, the United Nations inspectors said, no, this was carried out by the U.S.-backed rebels to blame on Assad. Shades of Saddam's nuclear weapons all over again. So Assad is basically accusing the U.S. government of lying. Not exactly worth a news headline there. And what we're seeing here is this ridiculous attempt by the United States of America to claim that Russia's scrubbing these terror groups out of Syria is somehow harming the peace efforts. That if Russia would just back on off and allow the terrorists to run wild and bring down Syria so it needs a new U.S. puppet government, that will be peace in the region. Syria will have peace when the legitimate government is destroyed and another U.S. puppet sits in there. Well, we all know that's not going to work. Because look at all the other nations the U.S. has invaded and regime changed, and they're not exactly peaceful, are they? It's still going on in Yemen. It's still going on in Libya. Afghanistan is starting to take its country back from its U.S. puppet rulers. Iraq isn't at all happy with being under U.S. puppet rule. There will be no peace until the United States is stopped from thinking that they can use the threat of war to force the rest of the world to run their economies for the benefit of Wall Street. All wars are bankers' wars. Now, Moscow, well, we're going to take a second here to do a shout-out to our on-air affiliates that are just now rejoining our network. We're talking about the war zones. Moscow says they think that the shelling of the Russian embassy and Washington's threats are connected. Because Washington has been threatening Moscow, if you don't get out of here, bad things will happen. And all of a sudden, boom, bad things started happening. And there are no coincidences in the political world. And it's continuing. The hotel in Aleppo, where the Russian TV crew has been staying, that has come under attack with artillery. Remember the second invasion of Iraq? And how somehow the hotel where press that was less than sympathetic to the American point of view kept getting hit with artillery fire. The hotel where the obedient corporate media was staying was never, ever, ever touched. Wow, what an amazing coincidence here. Now, France's Marine Le Pen, and I got to tell you, I'm liking her more and more and more and more, is out there saying the European Union is responsible for the chaos in Syria. Now, of course, Barack Obama has a different theory, and I am not kidding you. He came on out and said that global warming is contributing to the Syrian civil war. Assad's to blame. Assad's a bad person, but global warming only made it worse. And if you want peace in Syria, you will pay a carbon tax and you will live a reduced lifestyle. So we can take all of your wealth and give it to the money junkies. Now, there's a very revealing article that came on out from Blacklisted News, and it originated with Jane's Defense, which is a highly respected magazine and resource for the military. Jane's Defense Weekly was quoting documents released by the U.S. government's Federal Business Opportunities Agency. This is the agency that goes on out and solicits American companies to fulfill the needs of the U.S. government, and they're putting out all these tenders for untraceable weapons. And basically what it is, the U.S. is still sending enormous shipments of these light weapons into Syria, into the hands of their pet terrorists. Now, the Syrian people have filed a lawsuit against the United States government over the Deir ez-Zor massacre, because a lot of civilians were killed and a lot of civilian infrastructure was destroyed, and Congress just got hoisted with their own JASTA. Meanwhile, John McCain is out there on the campaign trail trying to hold on to his job and saying, U.S. diplomacy is toothless. We need a direct military intervention in Syria. Okay, John, here's your rifle. Here's your parachute. Here's your bright day glow orange jumpsuit left over from the CIA's torture centers. Go and have fun. Now, Iraq has gone to the United Nations Security Council for a resolution regarding the presence of Turkish troops in North Iraq. They've called for an emergency meeting. Turkey is still saying they're refusing to withdraw their troops. And Iraq is trying to play by the rules and go to the UN. And maybe this is just a coincidence, but there has been another U.S. airstrike that has killed 21 pro-Iraq government fighters. Gosh, we're just so sorry. We keep making these silly mistakes, but honest, we're on your side against ISIS and Al-Qaeda. Honest, really, really. Meanwhile, down in Yemen, things are not going good for Saudi Arabia, which is being used as the U.S. proxy in Yemen and probably is starting to regret that deal now that the U.S. has turned on them with this ridiculous JASTA law. And we already know that Saudi Arabia is now meeting with top Russian officials about a possible pivot to them. Meanwhile, though, Yemen missile attack in Marib killed tens of Saudi-funded mercenaries. The Saudis aren't even sending their own people anymore. They're just hiring mercenaries to go on in. All right, we're going to go ahead and take a couple of phone calls. Stephen in Oregon, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Michael.
Yes.
John from Barbados was mentioning you guys talk about 911 legislation.
Yes.
Catherine Austin Fitz on Greta Hunter's latest interview stated that Lockheed Martin has offshooted their accounting with the Pentagon because of the 911 legislation. So I just wanted to let you guys know that.
Okay, that's interesting. I would not be surprised to see that, where they're going to try and conceal assets ahead of the lawsuits because they're coming on in. You know,
that's right.
Iraq is suing, Syria is suing. This was one of the dumbest things for Congress to have done, and even dumber when they overrode Obama's veto. I don't agree with a lot that Obama has done, but he was being smart because he understood they were setting a dangerous precedent that was going to come back and bite the U.S., and by golly, that's exactly what happened. And then to have Mitch McConnell get on up there and say that this is all Obama's fault because he didn't force the Congress to consider this.
Yes, and she also mentioned like $21 trillion that's unaccounted for total.
$21 trillion that the Pentagon has lost?
Yes, total since I guess 2000.
21 trillion. I mean, that's the national debt. That's the federal government debt. If the Pentagon hadn't lost that money, if it hadn't been given to them in the first place to lose, our government would be under zero debt right now.
Yep.
Do you know that 57% of all the taxes you pay go to the military?
Blessings, Michael. Just wanted to give you that info.
All right. Thanks an awful lot, Stephen. We're going to switch over to Peter in Los Angeles. Aloha, Peter. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, hi, Michael. Also talking about what John from Barbados was saying, and John's a pretty smart guy, but I think that when you're talking about holding these guys to accountability, I'm talking about the head of Lockheed, basically the whole masters of the universe type guys, the bankers, the executives of the Fortune 500 companies and so on. It's never going to happen from overseas. It's just not going to happen. The government will turn around. They'll realize, the Congress will realize, that their owners that pay their bills, these CEOs and the 1%, don't want this thing, and they'll turn around. They'll get this thing repealed so that Obama's veto will be basically they'll renege on that law. But the only way that anybody is ever going to hold any of these people accountable, if it's done from within the United States, it's like unless another, and I think it's virtually militarily impossible for another country or a group of countries to physically occupy the United States, which is what it took to do the Nuremberg and the Japanese tribunals and all that. That will never happen here. This has to be done by us.
Okay, Peter, a couple of points you need to keep in mind. The U.S. never physically invaded the Japanese islands before Japan surrendered. So
the threat of invasion, and they did occupy them. Nobody will occupy them.
Well, they occupied them after the defeat. And again, getting on back to Germany, as part of the war reparations, all of Germany's intellectual property and physical property was confiscated and given to American companies. a lot of the amazing technological inventions that came out of the American companies after World War II had actually been invented in Germany, and they were simply taken away and given to American companies. And like I said before, don't worry about executions for these money junkies and these CEOs and everything, because for them, death is preferable than losing all their wealth and being forced to live like an ordinary American.
Mike, I absolutely agree with you. You're right, Operation Paperclip and all that stuff, everybody going for the German scientists and technology, no doubt about it, but it was the occupation that enabled that. And these guys, Mike, they're our age. For their entire lives, they've been getting away with stealing and murdering, and rules don't apply to them. They don't care a lick about what's going on. The only thing they fear is the mob rule here. They fear us. They don't have to fear Russia or China holding them to account. It ain't going to happen.
Well, I want to give you a quote here. This is from Gandhi, who I've always tried to use as an inspiration for how I'm approaching these problems here. And he once said, "Remember that all through history there have been tyrants and murderers, and for a time they may seem invincible, but in the end they always fall. Always." And I think we're about to see that. Just as we're about to see,
I think you're right.
Just as we're about to see the U.S. government recreate the fall of the Soviet Union, simply collapsing from its own internal rot and corruption. Okay?
I think you're right, but I think it's going to fall from internally, Mike.
I would prefer to see that. I would prefer to see that than have to get into a world war with the rest of the world or have a civil war in the American streets. My best option for the future of America is that central federal government simply collapses from its debt, its corruption, its rot, and the American people waking up and realizing just what kind of people are populating the positions of power in this country. And it gets back to that whole issue of narcocracy and the decline of the United States of America going all the way back to the mid-1980s and that CIA gun and drug running operation out of Arkansas to Nicaragua and funded by literally tons of cocaine brought back into the U.S. and sold to our children. That's the kind of people who run this country.
Let me leave you with one quote, and here's one from Abraham Lincoln.
Yes.
No country or a group of countries will ever be able to force a drink from the Ohio River. Just can't happen. It won't happen. Militarily, won't happen. But we have to do it internally.
Lincoln said a lot of things, and a lot of them are really good, but Lincoln made that statement at a time when artillery was the most potent weapon out there. And now we're in an age of intercontinental ballistic missiles, cruise missiles, all kinds of things that could lay waste across the entire U.S. Without a single Russian soldier setting foot on the ground, just like we did to Japan at the end of World War II. And I'd rather we not find out by direct experiment whether that's going to work or not. I still would like to see Washington, D.C. and that power structure just collapse the way the Soviet Union did. Because the alternative is we're going to be in a world war. It's going to go nuclear. I'm a little nervous about it. Apparently the Russians are now flying bomber patrols just out over the horizon that-a-way.
They should be doing that. If they're wise, they're doing that. That's right. Mm-hmm. And I'd be nervous if I were you too, Mike.
Too late to stop now. I mean, the point when we could have kissed and made up with this government came and went decades ago.
Yeah, I agree. But if they were going to have even a nuclear war, they'd get devastated too, and there aren't enough ships in the world to transport enough troops in the world to subdue the United States and actually occupy them and arm the United States. We've got to take these guys out ourselves.
Well, again, I am opposed to the idea of a civil war in the streets of America. I'm opposed to a new world war. But there's one other thing to consider, and then we've got to take a break here for commercials, and we're going to shut off the phone lines because I'm way behind on the talking points. Should a foreign enemy set foot on this soil and say, we're only interested in taking out the federal government, how many Americans do you think would intercede and try and protect that central government versus how many would simply sit back and say, all right, have fun? Because this government does not have the trust and faith and support of the American people. And I certainly would not risk my little body saving Washington, D.C. from an invader. Okay, we got to take a break for commercials. Thank you for the call, Peter, and we'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. We're going to close the phone lines for a little while so I can get caught up on the talking points here and get some news out there. Now, there's a very revealing article that came out from antiwar.com, and it sort of dovetails with that revelation that the U.S. has been sending hundreds and hundreds of these MRAP trucks to Egypt at no cost to Egypt. Obviously, the cost is to you. But this article over at Antiwar is saying there's this special Pentagon fund that is pushing bomb production. And they're doing it not in expectation of actually using them, but to have a stockpile for sale. When World War III really gets going and everybody's going to be scrambling for weapons, the U.S. is trying to build up a surplus so they can say, yeah, we got lots of stuff to sell you. Here we go. There, get your used bomb lot or whatever it is. It's called the Pentagon Special Defense Acquisition Fund. And the fund exists for them to prime the pump of the military-industrial complex, ramp up production, and just build up huge stockpiles. And maybe this is really where all that $6 or $9 or $21 trillion has vanished to. And as I mentioned before, 57% of the taxes you pay go to the military. Now, as I mentioned in that phone call, Russian bombers, the updated Bear, the Backfire, and the Blackjack are now running patrols in the triangle formed by Japan, Guam, and right here in Hawaii. And obviously that's not something that's very comfortable to think about. And Russia is basically using Syria right now to demonstrate to the world the accuracy and reliability of their weapons, which are also much less expensive than those made by the United States of America. And they've just tested the H-101 missile. This is the one that they used when they launched strikes into Syria from all the way in Russia. And this missile, the H-101, has a range of 4,500 kilometers, and Russia's weapons are hitting what they're aimed at, and they keep on working in the rain and the fog and dirt conditions. Their aircraft are all rough field capable. American aircraft are so delicate, if there's a paperclip on the runway, it can break. And that's why anytime you see air operations, the first thing you have is a line of people just going down the runway looking for any little tiny debris. Now, another article, this is coming out of Global Research up in Canada. The CIA, the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and the Pentagon are convening at the White House, beating the drums for war with Russia. And we're basically at the point where I think they're going to drop all pretense about humanitarian war and we're saving the people from an evil dictator and, if we don't get them, they're going to send terrorists and the rest of it, and it's just going to haul off and say, yeah, we're the aggressor. We are the new war machine and we will bring the Fourth Reich into existence, or whatever it is they're going to be saying. Down in India and Pakistan, they're still shooting at each other. Pakistan insists India keeps carrying out unprovoked attacks to which they must respond. The U.S. is trying to fan that one up as well. I'm afraid when the World War breaks out, it's going to break out everywhere almost instantaneously together, and we're going to just be in this mess. And if we allow it to happen, if we allow Hillary to become the war princess, I don't think any of us listening to this show are ever going to live to see a time of peace again. I don't think so. Now, as you know, Israel commandeered the women's boat to Gaza, singular. They had two boats. One of them suffered a mysterious mechanical breakdown. And all of the activists on board had pre-made videotapes to be released upon their seizure because they knew that was going to happen. And they're out there with all these messages and saying, go ahead and write the UN, write the media, and just shame Israel for what they're doing. For one thing, Israel captured this vessel in international waters. That's technically an act of piracy on the high seas. And I seem to recall, it wasn't all that long ago, pirates got hanged. And so you have Israel came on out and grabbed this thing, and wow, big manly men from Israel beating up a boat full of girls. Of course, when it comes to a real war, Israel steps back and lets the Americans do the fighting for them, because that's what the Americans are for. We'll be right back. Aloha, and no, don't pick up the phone. We have not opened the phone lines yet because I got a lot of news to get through. Okay, we're talking about what's going on over in Israel. And we knew Israel was going to start doing some really nasty things like grab the girls' boat and everything to prove what manly men they are. Slap these little girls around. And also, somebody fired a bottle rocket from inside Gaza into Israel, which as usual hit an empty lot and caused no damage whatsoever. And at this point, it's pretty obvious that this is somebody inside Gaza working for Israel, an agent provocateur who's doing this, because everybody in Gaza knows what happens when a bottle rocket goes on over the fence and hits an empty lot. Israel attacks. Well, speaking of karma, it may be coming into work because apparently one of Israel's F-16I aircraft developed a problem on its way back from bombing a bunch of innocent Gazan people. The plane itself crashed, and the crew had to eject, and the pilot was killed by the process of ejection. The navigator, lightly injured, but, you know, it might actually give those flight crews pause. Maybe the Gazans can't fight back, but you could still die doing these war crimes, which is what it really is. Now, over in Palestine, as you know, their current president, Abbas, no relation to the guy in Syria, is 81 years old, and he's getting ready to step down for health reasons. And apparently, Yasser Arafat's nephew, Nasser al-Kidwa, is being groomed to be the next head of the Palestinian Authority. So there will be some new blood there, and I'm sure that Nasser is keenly aware of exactly how Yasser Arafat died, even if the Western media continues to deny it. The other day we were talking about the Arizona VA and how, despite promises that things were going to get better, they're still ignoring wounded veterans. They're still canceling appointments. It's taking these veterans months to get any care at all. And if you understand some of the traumatic injuries suffered in war, you can't let them sit for months on end. They go from being something that can be treated and dealt with to something that becomes chronic and permanent, and no amount of medical care is going to fix it. Well, now the VA in Hines, Illinois, has been caught on out because apparently the veterans who have died from their injuries or from neglect are just being piled up in the morgue until they literally rot. There was even a story about one human remains pouch, which is the new fancy name for a body bag, literally exploded from the gas that was coming on out from inside. Apparently they're not keeping things refrigerated. And Fox News is reporting that an informant saying is not only are they just piling up the veterans' bodies, they do have the resources to give them a proper and honorable burial. They're just not bothering with it. And for those of you who are thinking about joining the military or already in the military, this is how the government really sees you. You are a commodity to be used up and then just thrown away. They have zero respect for you. As long as you can go on out and kill who they want you to kill and steal whatever it is they want stolen, they'll give you all kinds of shiny guns and bullets and the rest of it, and as soon as you're no longer of any use, you are on your own. They want you to die and just go away and stop being a loss on the balance sheet. Because that's how they see you. You're an item on a spreadsheet. You're a commodity. They're just literally throwing you away. Now, over at the United Nations, as you know, Ban Ki-moon's term as Secretary General is coming to an end, and the UN Security Council has unanimously nominated former Portuguese Prime Minister Antonio Guterres to be the next Secretary General of the United Nations, and I'm sure over at the White House we're hearing screaming, darn it, that was supposed to be my next job. Because we know that both Bill Clinton and Barack Obama had dreams of being ruler of the world. by being Secretary General of the United Nations, which is not really supposed to be a governing body in the first place. It was set up to be a forum to peacefully resolve the world's conflicts, but has mutated into a global government, just like the European Union was originally supposed to be just a trading bloc with open borders, and has mutated into one of the worst tyrannies the Europeans have ever had to suffer underneath. Now, we've been talking about the problems with various banks that are hideously exposed in derivatives. Everybody's looking at Deutsche Bank. They had their stock hammered by losses by the Department of Justice, hitting them with a $14 billion fine over their malfeasances during the 2008 mortgage-backed security fraud. They're being sued by other countries for other things. 6 of their former executives are under indictment in Italy for derivatives fraud down there in one of their problematic banks. It really is a completely criminal enterprise. And Angela Merkel had already come on out and said Deutsche Bank will not get a German bailout for the simple reason that Germany doesn't have that kind of money. So now the European Union as a whole is proposing a derivatives system bailout for Deutsche Bank and the other banks that have way too many derivatives to be paid for by everybody in Europe. Problem solved. No, it isn't, for a very simple reason. Deutsche Bank's gross derivatives exposure stands at 42 trillion euros. The entire gross domestic product for the entire European Union is 14.6 trillion. And the German gross domestic product all by itself is just 3 trillion. They don't have the money. It isn't there. And even if by some miracle they were able to save Deutsche Bank by stripping all the wealth from all the people of Europe, just leave them standing out in the street, totally naked, hungry, and cold, with no homes and nothing, they're still going to have nothing with which to save the next bank, possibly Credit Suisse. This is now in a hopeless situation. Remember that 11th marble I was telling you all about? Well, it's been growing and growing and growing, and now it's the size of the asteroid that killed off the dinosaurs, and it's heading on in to Europe as we speak. And despite this, Germany is willing to hamstring their economy even further with more sanctions against Russia over Russia's aggression in Syria. Harumph, 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 harumph. Now, Deutsche Bank has now been forced to downgrade Commerzbank. The total number of jobs they're getting ready to cut has grown to 10,000. And they're in decline. Now, remember the other day, Deutsche Bank's ATM machines went dark. Just a computer glitch. We don't have a cash flow problem, honest, it's just a computer glitch. Today it's TD Bank. I don't think it's computer glitches. I think they're coming up short. Remember, it isn't solvency that kills a bank, it's liquidity. A bank can be very, very rich in assets, like deeds and trusts and bonds and the rest of it. But if they don't have operating cash, they are going down. Now, according to Business Insider, the IMF currently believes worldwide debt is 152 trillion, with a T, dollars. This is the highest gross global debt ever recorded. The debt to GDP ratio is at an all-time high of 225%, having grown just 25% from 14 years ago. And here is the problem, and nobody wants to talk about it. When you allow a private central bank to issue all the public currency as a loan at interest, the debt always exceeds the available money supply. It doesn't matter how hard you work. It doesn't matter how much you sacrifice. You can never pay off the debt and be free again. Private central banking is an enslavement mechanism. It's a form of governance, because banks use the awareness of debt to control you, to control your government. To quote from that movie, The International, the very essence of the banking industry is to keep us all, whether we are nations or individuals, slaves to debt. This is not a legitimate form of governance. It's no more legitimate than rule by divine right or rule by slavery. And like those former failed systems, it only works as long as you allow yourself to be brainwashed into thinking this is the way the world is supposed to be, and that there is no other possible alternative. We already know there is. There's the system that the United States started with. The government created the currency, coined the money. The coins were the money of fixed value. The paper notes were just claim checks for convenience. The government would then spend that money into circulation to buy what the government needed. The money would flow through commerce without accruing interest. And then the government would tax that money back in the same amount at the end of the cycle to balance the books. And it works for the nation and the people. And it's why the young America became such an economic powerhouse. Because the nations of Europe that were already struggling under the yoke of private central banks couldn't keep up with it. And that's why those private central banks of Europe worked so hard to try and enslave the young United States to private central banking. With the first Bank of the United States, and then with the second Bank of the United States, and finally the third Bank of the United States, otherwise known as the Federal Reserve, which is no more federal than Federal Express. That's the scam, and it's been going on for 300 years. And as long as you allow a private central bank control of your national currency, you will be poor and hopelessly in debt. And there is nothing anybody can do to change the situation. Because nations with private central banks always collapse. Now, in the past, when a nation with a private central bank ultimately failed, the other nations enslaved to private central banks would send in money and they'd restart the system. And so the failures would hop from country to country to country to country. But today, because of globalism and the interlinking of all these banks and the derivatives crossover, when it goes down, it's all going to go down. And we, the people of planet Earth, are going to have a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to permanently ban the concept of private central banking and have a public currency that operates as a public utility. If you have not read All Wars Are Bankers' Wars, please do so. It's in that permanent menu up at the top of the page. You need to read that. Now, over in Iceland, their Supreme Court has just upheld the guilty verdict of 9 of their bankers who are committing fraud. One of them is a woman. They're all going to the Huskow, or whatever they do in Iceland. Maybe they toss them into a volcano. Why aren't we doing that here? Ever since Iceland wrote off all that fraudulently created debt and started jailing their bankers, Iceland's doing very good, certainly compared to the United States and Europe, which is why you never hear about Iceland anymore in the corporate media. Don't want you slaves getting uppity ideas about getting rid of your masters on Wall Street. Can't have that. Anyway. Over in Germany, Angela Merkel is still out there pushing for the transatlantic trade and investment partnership deal. She still wants it to go ahead. She thinks it's a wonderful idea it certainly is for the globalists, for corporate rule. And she's still pushing for it despite this incredible surge of European anger over this whole idea, this scam. And the fact that the negotiations for the TTIP have pretty much ended with nothing being accomplished. But Merkel's out there saying, yes, this is great, we have to go forward. Chicago has now suspended Wells Fargo from any business connected to the city for a year because of the recent fraud involving artificially created accounts. Were created in the names of customers without their permission to charge them fees. Heavy truck orders have plunged. This is the worst September since 2009. And as tensions with Russia are being fanned up to lead to war, there's a little wrinkle people aren't thinking about, and that is the RD-180 rocket engines. See, along with all of the other things that the U.S. no longer knows how to do, We can't build our own rocket engines anymore. And even with all that's been going on, the U.S. has still been purchasing RD-180 rocket engines, which are declared exempt from the sanctions. Now, Russia could very easily say, we're not going to sell them to you anymore. And that's going to be a serious problem, because right now the United States isn't able to build a reliable rocket engine that can launch surveillance satellites or weapons in space. We can't even get astronauts up to the space station anymore. They've been hitching rides with Russia. Russia could shut that off as well. Now, over at Goldcore, they have an article. Top gold forecaster is saying as quickly as gold fell, and it did recently, it may rally back on global risks. Well, in a fair and open market, you might think about that was going to happen. The problem is it's not a market. We know it's rigged. We know they've been rigging gold prices all along. And the problem is, as long as there are morons out there willing to buy those way over-leveraged gold paper contracts, the money junkies will go on printing them to keep forcing the price of real gold down. Because that's how the gold price is set. It's the availability of real physical gold and the paper contracts. They're all blended together. So they can keep the price of gold down artificially just by running more of those paper contracts off. And who knows, maybe they're selling them to each other just so that they can keep the price of gold down. Because when gold starts up, what's going to happen? People are going to empty their savings accounts, which now they've got negative interest rates. They're going to get out of the stock market, which is looking more and more risky, and more people understand it's being artificially propped up. It's way overvalued. And they're going to be getting into hard assets, as well as they should. Soup Plantation is going to has just filed for bankruptcy, going to be closing 30 restaurants. And right now, 2/3 of young American adults are still having to live with their parents. They cannot find high-paying jobs. They cannot pay off their student loans. Don't tell us the economy is improving. Don't tell us there's a recovery. Anybody looking around can tell this economy is heading downhill rapidly. Got to take a break for commercials. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. And a very troubling story just came out, courtesy of Russia Today. And basically, it's a video. We just now put it up at WhatReallyHappened.com. As soon as the cache refreshes, it should be available here. But basically, one of the White House spokesslug is out there saying that the White House may impose costs on Russia and Syria without United Nations approval. And we have been hearing from other sources that costs is the new euphemism for we're going to bomb them, which means the United States has now officially gone rogue. Because without a UN approval, they can't claim it's humanitarian, they can't claim it's the international community. This is the United States invading another country and starting a war. This is getting very, very serious right now. We should all be alarmed. Alrighty, getting on back to the economic news. Bill Clinton is saying that NAFTA has nothing to do with jobs going to Mexico. It's just capitalism. It's the way capitalism works, and where the people are going to go, where labor costs are cheaper, and that's just the way it's supposed to be. Well, remember, the only reason it's economically advantageous for American companies to take their jobs to other countries is because the tax laws were written to make it so. And this goes back to George Bush's term in office, as part of this plan to sort of level the playing field across the globe so that the borders could be dropped. And all you need to do is change the tax laws back. All you got to do is say if you're an American corporation and you are taking jobs to other countries, there's going to be a premium. You're going to pay a huge tax on every foreign worker that you hire. And the jobs will skedaddle back here to the United States. Now, the other day, we commented on how Bill Clinton came on out and said Obamacare is crazy, it doesn't work and doesn't make any sense. And Donald Trump, of course, is out there saying, yes, Bill Clinton is right about this. And the Hillary Clinton campaign is in a panic because in a roundabout way, Bill Clinton just endorsed Donald Trump on this issue. Because Donald Trump wants to end Obamacare and Hillary's already out there saying it needs to be expanded. We need to take more money away from you. We need to raise your premiums and your deductibles even more because, hey, if you've got something that isn't working, you know, the American political thing to do is let's do more of it and see if that fixes the situation, which is kind of like backing up the Titanic and ramming that iceberg one more time just to see if maybe the water stops coming on in. Now, right now, despite all the sanctions and everything else, the ruble is the best performing emerging market currency since the OPEC agreement to cut production last week. Just took right on off. All right, got to take a break for station identification. We'll be back after these few words. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show, hour number 3, and we're still closing the phone lines because I'm trying to get caught up on all the things I have on my list today here. Now, everybody who was forecasting doom and gloom for the British economy following the Brexit vote have had to back up. Britain's economy is actually starting to take off in anticipation of a Britain freed from yet another layer of blood-sucking money junkie parasites ruling over them. And down in Australia, the former Prime Minister Tony Abbott is proposing a no-tariffs trade deal between Australia and Great Britain following Britain's formal exit from the European Union. Trying to break free from the bankers, the slave masters. Now, the European Union has demanded that the British press stop describing Muslim terrorists as Muslim. Don't know what word they're expected to use. You know, non-Christian, non-Jewish terrorists. Is that going to work? I mean, that's ridiculous. If these people are Muslim and they're committing acts of terror, what is wrong with saying this is a Muslim terrorist? Because they're still trying to keep that refugee and immigration program going. No matter who gets hurt in it. Up in Germany, obviously it's October, and not too surprisingly with all the crime and rape and everything going on, Oktoberfest attendance has plummeted. Lowest turnout in 15 years because of the heightened security fears from all these refugees running around attacking women. Now, I had the great pleasure of attending a real Bavarian Oktoberfest. It was a heck of a party. But, you know, it's a small price to pay for the New World Order and global government for you to give up your culture, to give up your traditions, give up your identity, forget which restroom you're supposed to use. These are all small prices to pay for the glory of a one world government and a golden throne of planet Earth. So, we may be looking at a Nexit because Dutch voters are turning to the right. Eurosceptic Geert Wilders is soaring in the polls. This whole European Union experiment is crashing to the ground. And there are two factors. First of all, the European Union was created with a built-in self-destruct device called the European Central Bank, where it was only a matter of time before the people of Europe were driven down into crushing poverty because that's what private central banks do. And that may be the reason that what was sold to the European people as an open borders trading bloc had to turn itself into a dictatorship to keep the masses from rising up once they realized how they'd been snookered. Now, Angela Merkel is out there criticizing the closure of the popular migrant route. And this is the Balkan route, which has seen more than 700,000 migrants enter Europe since last year. And it was closed off, and Merkel is saying, how dare you do that? How dare you stop these refugees from coming on in here? I wonder how many refugees are living in Angela Merkel's house right now. Now, needless to say, the people of Germany have had it. with Angela Merkel, with refugees, with the New World Order, with the European Union. They want to go back to being Germans. Good for them. And German protesters are out there saying, let's send Angela Merkel to Siberia and let's put Vladimir Putin in Berlin. And a lot of people are starting to actually say that. Putin is gaining a reputation as a world-class statesman. And believe it or not, somebody just hung a banner with a picture of Putin labeled Peacemaker, and it was hung from the Manhattan Bridge today. I'm sure it'll be torn down briefly, but they did get pictures. Now, here's something you need to keep in mind. Angela Merkel and Hillary Clinton are aligned on these policies of New World Order, open borders, various other liberal causes. Look what Angela Merkel has done to Germany, and understand that if we allow Hillary Clinton to steal that White House, she will do exactly the same thing to this country. It's already underway with the open borders policy. Okay. Getting on to police brutality. Story that came out of Oraz.com. Apparently, police were arresting an individual. They tased him 15 times. To nobody's surprise, he died. The district attorney is saying the police who did it will not face criminal charges. Because after all, they're the police. Blue lives matter. Especially when they got blue sparks. Little blue flashies all over the body. Up in Massachusetts, remember the other day I was talking about this undercover operation. They put a cop as an employee at a Burger King for 2 whole months. And they got 5 whole grams of marijuana and 2 pills. Well, it's happened again. Up in Massachusetts, police used a military-style helicopter insertion to seize 1 marijuana plant from an 81-year-old woman who was using the marijuana to ease her glaucoma and her arthritis pain. Get in the military helicopter. Because by golly, if you want illegal drugs, you go to the CIA and you buy them. You're not allowed to grow your own. Now, if you're my age, you probably remember a gentleman by the name of Mumia Abu Jamal. He was a former Black Panther. He was a survivor of the FBI's infiltration and militarization of the Black Panthers during COINTELPRO in the 1960s. He's been thrown in jail for a murder that a great many people are convinced he never actually did. Kind of like Leonard Peltier. Now, what's really interesting is that a year ago, Sputnik News was reporting how Mumia Abu Jamal and his supporters were saying there was a plot in the prison to kill him off by medical neglect. And this is not without precedent. They did exactly the same thing to James Earl Ray. At the same time, lawsuits were starting to pile up, and they had evidence that the rifle planted on James Earl Ray did not, in fact, fire the bullet that killed Martin Luther King. So they kept him in prison, they denied him treatment, and he died. And then they shut all the lawsuits down, saying nobody else has standing to sue, case is closed, we know he did it. He confessed under coercion, and that's going to be good enough for you. Well, today, Jamal has filed a federal lawsuit against officials in the Pennsylvania prison system for denying him treatment for hepatitis C, which has reached life-threatening levels. And mind you, this is in a country where prisoners are being given sex change operations on demand. This guy has hepatitis C, and he's not being treated. They want him to die because he's become a huge embarrassment to the system. Okay. We're going to go ahead and open the phone lines now and let some people get on in here. Let's talk about vaccines for a little bit. This is getting out of control. A couple of very important stories out of Natural News. Evidence is continuing to surface that vaccines are triggering hypersensitivity of the immune system, causing extreme allergies autism, and occasionally death. And they're talking about something that I have mentioned many, many times. And that is the use of peanut oil as a vaccine adjuvant, which began in the 1960s. And before the 1960s, peanut anaphylaxis was unknown in this country. Absolutely unknown. And then they put peanut oil in the vaccines, and you're supposed to eat it, not inject it into your bloodstream. But by 1980s, peanut oil was in most vaccines, and thousands of kids have peanut sensitivities, violent reactions, often fatal. You've probably seen when you get a package at the store and it says, this was processed in a factory where it may have been exposed to peanut dust. And it's epidemic, like autism. And it didn't exist before the vaccines. Another article from the same source on the same subject, showing that childhood allergies to peanuts, eggs, and dairy have now been directly linked to the adjuvants in common vaccines. Why are they doing it? Well, they're making a fortune off of those EpiPens that all the parents have to carry around all the time in case their kid goes into anaphylactic shock. Making people sensitive to peanuts and various other things is good for business. It's good for business. Now, there's a very alarming piece of news coming on how the CDC is literally getting ready to have its own vaccine police who will literally go on out and arrest people who are unvaccinated. They're calling them disease criminals, and they will forcibly stick needles in you. But, of course, the illegal immigrants who actually have diseases are being ignored. Why are they doing this? Well, money is money is money is money. They want everybody taking the vaccines. And also, if everybody's vaccinated, then we no longer have an unvaccinated population as a control group in these studies about what these vaccines are really doing. There's a growing body of evidence that vaccines during the first year of life lead to serious immunological disorders. They're not immunizing you, they're actually making your immune systems weaker. Now, you remember Vaxxed. That's that movie about, it's a documentary about the fake CDC study that the whistle was blown on by one of the study's author, was scheduled to be shown at the Tribeca Film Festival. Robert De Niro was put under tremendous pressure by the festival's backers who had deep financial ties to Big Pharma, and he yanked that. He's gone public afterwards and said he's regretted it, was the wrong thing to do, and he's right. It was the wrong thing to do. Well, apparently down in Australia, there was supposed to be a screening of Vaxxed at the Castlemaine Local and International Film Festival. And that's now been canceled as well because of what's described as a highly coordinated campaign of intimidation against the film festival's organizers. It's thuggery. If there's nothing to hide, why block the film? And you know something, every time they do this, it only makes people more eager to see it. It's the Banned in Boston effect. People are buying the DVDs. They're having private screenings at their home. They're not going to be able to keep this from getting on out. How we have all been deliberately made sick by the big pharmaceutical corporations so that we will have to buy more product from them. That's what's going on. And it's not just vaccines. Story coming out of SOT.net, where they're beginning to finally see studies into just how these psychiatric medications are altering the brain. And to nobody's surprise who's ever been over to ssristories.org, they're discovering that these highly profitable drugs are in fact causing more harm than good. There's a huge record of prescription antidepressants causing violence, suicide, poor impulse control. It may be part of the problem behind police brutality because police take a lot of these medications, more than the average population. And we documented a clear correlation between the increase per capita in domestic violence and the introduction of these drugs on a mass level to the American marketplace. Everyone's wondering why America's going crazy. We may be driven crazy by these medications that are being sold to us by doctors we're told to trust and protected by the government because it's profitable. All right, we're going to take a phone call. Wes in Idaho. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hello, Michael. Google the words autism is just the tip of the iceberg. It's Dr. Ted Corin in Pennsylvania. He's a chiropractor. There's a picture there. And 50 other diseases that vaccinations cause.
Yeah. Yeah, it's out there. I mean, they're putting stuff in these vaccines, and you have to wonder why. In fact, we found out apparently some of these vaccines have glyphosate in them, and there's no. And what was that other enzyme that they discovered was in there? I'm trying to remember the name of it. It's Nagalase. Nagalase. Claire just saved me on this one. Nagalase is an enzyme that actually wrecks your own body's ability to fight off cancer. It's been found in vaccines, and there's no legitimate reason for it to be there. The medical industrial complex is deliberately making us sick because unless we're all sick, they go out of business.
Another thing I'd like to mention, Michael, I got 35 books on the subject of vaccinations, and I got multiple sclerosis from vaccinations, and I'm sure, absolutely positively certain, there has never been a safe or effective vaccination. That includes smallpox, Jenner, and as well as the Jonas Salk polio vaccinations. The medical mafia actually changed the diagnosis of diseases to make it look good and effective.
Well, we caught them doing that back in 2009 with the When Pigs Fly flu, and they were out there saying it's going to be a global pandemic, and you've got to go out and buy Tamiflu. And then we found out that all they done is simply redefined lower the number of cases, at which point they say it's a global pandemic. And it actually turned out that when pigs fly flu was less severe than the normal seasonal flu. It's all about grabbing money. I mean, our entire society has become hopelessly corrupted from top to bottom. And you have to wonder, where does it ever stop? It's almost like the old story of Demosthenes wandering around with his lantern looking for an honest man.
George Bernard Shaw, born about 1850 in Ireland, actually witnessed. They made it mandatory in 1853, a smallpox vaccination of Jenner, and then about 50 years later, he was on the London Community Board of Health and actually said he witnessed cases of smallpox, and they were calling them pustular eczema to make it look like their vaccination was good and successful.
We're seeing that. We're seeing that today with this, this epidemic of polio-like mystery disease, and all these people who got the polio vaccine. But we know it's not polio. They had the vaccine. This must be something new. Yeah, it's just absolute lying to protect the almighty dollar.
50 years later, the very same thing happened with the Jonas Salk polio vaccination. All of a sudden, cases of septic meningitis jumped up when they started using this Salk polio vaccination. Rather than admitting that the Salk polio vaccination was causing polio, it said, no, that's a septic meningitis. It's very difficult to tell the difference between a septic meningitis and polio. They're virtually the same.
I know that. We had the story a couple of weeks back where a lot of people dying in the hospitals are succumbing to this new strain of superbugs, these antibiotic-resistant infections, but it's never recorded as the cause of death on the death certificate in order to just basically protect the hospitals, protect from lawsuits. And we've really gone so far over this idea where anything that makes money is automatically good and anything that's losing money is automatically bad. Wes, we're going to have to let you go. We got to take a break for commercials, and we'll be back with more phone calls after these few words. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. And before we go back to the phones here, I'm looking at a story somebody just sent me. It's got a misleading headline. Lawsuit finds millions of uncounted Bernie Sanders ballots. The body of the story does not support that, but it does say that apparently the lawsuit to force a complete count of all the provisional ballots, millions of which were left uncounted, is moving forward. Now, there's going to be a problem because down in San Diego, those provisional ballots have already been destroyed in violation of state law. But this whole election fraud that cheated Bernie Sanders is starting to come up again. All right, we're going to go back to the phones. Jeff in Minnesota, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind? Jeff, are you there?
He just dropped.
He just dropped. Okay, let's go over to Nancy in New Jersey. Aloha, Nancy. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Aloha, Mike.
Aloha, Nui.
I just wanted to say thank you so much for your show. I know everybody, thanks you, but I play it on my speakers outside while I garden because I have some very liberal neighbors, and they're hearing it because I'm in the woods and it echoes. Anyway, I called because I got the idea every holiday season. I always like giving gifts out that have a meaning.
Yes.
And I bought all copies of Vax to hand out to everybody in my family who's very liberal.
I've been a really good boy this year, and I could use one. No, I'm kidding. I'm going to order my own. But that's a very good thing to do. I've been handing out copies of the Video of All Wars or Bankers' Wars, and one of our supporters here made up a huge box of buttons, Hillary for Prison and the website. And I keep wearing those, and people will say, I really love it, and I'll say, great, it's yours, and I hand them off, and so they're getting on out there as well. Yeah, this is what I mean by grassroots action. We can, by doing little simple things like this, we can shout down that corporate media.
Yes, definitely. And it's such a great production. I mean, I've been anti-vax for a long time, and I watched it, and I was still educated and very persuasive, and I think that it's just going to turn these people around. A lot of them are doctors, and they vaccinate their kids, and I think it'll do good.
Well, I think it will. I mean, I think what people are just not able to deal with is just the sheer scale of the lies that we are living in. And it even gets a little daunting to me when you realize our entire society is based on lies and fraud and deception. And we've actually lost our soul. We've lost what it is to be an American people because everybody around us is lying to get rich or to get power over us. And it's not just the government, it's the banks. They're committing fraud. It's the medical industrial complex. And it really is a classic case of how the love of money is the root of all evil.
Yeah, it definitely is. And I'm expecting them to, at first, they're going to, not be able to accept it because it's so horrific. But it's in their mind. And as things deteriorate, they're going to start questioning.
Yeah, well, you got to question.
The healthier children and the children in the country, I mean, that's not something that you can just ignore when you finally start waking up.
Well, it's very rattling to a lot of people when they begin to encounter just how huge, it all is. We literally are living in a real-life version of the Matrix. Everything that we are told, that we see in front of us, turns out to be a facade, hiding some dark, evil purpose.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Well, thank you very much.
You got it. Thank you very much. We're going to let you go there. And got some things developing here that don't look very good. Speaking of the greed of the medical establishment, there's a story that came out of RINF.com. Apparently, in Utah, a hospital literally charged a family $40 to have a skin-to-skin contact with their newborn baby. I mean, That's ridiculous. And I'm sure, with the enthusiastic parents, they're going to say, all right, $40, it's not that much. We want to touch our kid. The hospital is charging the parents of a newborn baby $40 to actually touch their own baby. That's ridiculous. It is absolutely, absolutely ridiculous. All right, getting on back to the news. A Government Accountability Office probe has found at least 21 cases of lethal... Oh, we got to take a break for commercials. All right. How time flies when you're having fun. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. A couple of quick developments before we go on back to the phone lines here. Apparently, Turkish forces were bombing people in Kandil, and the Kurdish forces succeeded in shooting down one of the F-16s. So that's not going to calm things down very much. Now, I'm getting emails about a story that's being posted all over the net about how Putin has now authorized the Russian Navy to shoot at any NATO ships interfering with the Russian fleet, which would seem like a reasonable thing at this point. But I hunted this down, and this is more crud from Sorcha Fall that gets picked up and reposted by other websites without attribution to kind of launder it. But it's nonsense. If it originates with Sorcha Fall and that website, whatisitmean.com, which I think was inspired by my website's name, it's nonsense. It's junk. It's another case of U.S. propagandists trying to just keep up the confusion to delay the formation of a popular consensus. Now, Sorcha Fall is actually a guy named David Booth, and he literally lives within just a couple of miles of the CIA headquarters. All right, let's see. Story I was talking about just before we went to the break here. The GAO has found at least 21 cases of lethal pathogens being shipped around the country without adequate safeguards. Somebody slips up and drops one of these boxes, and you're going to have a major disaster. Back to the phones. Jason in Ontario, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike, I just want to let you know and thank you that I recently watched your Pentagon Wars recommendation.
Yes.
And it was fascinating. And we had heard about this stuff but through you and Alex Jones and Mike Savage and some other people. We had heard about this for a while, but it was interesting seeing it in a movie that was kind of funny. But it bothers me that, and for the love of humanity, I hope that Donald Trump wins this election. But I don't know that he understands that there's a lot of corruption and fraud and waste in the military-industrial complex.
Yeah, there is. I mean, there's so much money flowing around. Nobody thinks it's anything important to take care of. And I remember when I was still working for Robert Abel & Associates, toward the end of their run, they formed a separate division to do media support for various government projects and whatnot. And we got hired by one of the companies involved in Reagan's defense program that was called Star Wars, had nothing to do with the movie. And we were having to go out to Denver, Colorado on a regular basis. And it was such a shock for most of the people working on this project. I'd already been through this when I worked for NASA. But seeing just the sheer volume of money that was flowing out there, most of us, money is like water in an eyedropper, drip, 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 bill here. And all these defense companies, they got fire hoses. And it's almost a cultural psychic shock to just see the sheer volume of money that goes through these companies.
Yeah, I hear you. And the same, that on some of the websites today, different sites, the trolls are out saying how the Russian military is depleted and it's useless and it's terrible, and that the U.S. Military is so much stronger. And yet, can we believe that?
Of course we can. Of course we can. Of course we can. We've been hearing all along about how poorly designed and badly built America's latest weapons are, and they're hideously expensive. And we have seen in Syria just how effective Russia's military has become, because our military-industrial complex has been pretty much all about building the weapons to fight World War II all over again. Russia and China have understood the paradigm has shifted, And they are certainly much better prepared for this. They're much better prepared to protect their civilian population. That huge drill they just had in Russia shows it. Meanwhile, the attitude we're getting from Washington, D.C. is if we slip up and start a nuclear war, you guys are all on your own. You know, those fallout shelters are full, the supplies are rotted, we got nothing in there. We've got barely enough money to protect the money junkies and the politicians, and the rest of you are just going to have to look out for yourselves.
Yeah, that's right. Anyway, thanks, Mike. I'll let you go.
All right, thanks an awful lot. Jeff in Minnesota, welcome back to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, hi, how's it going?
Going good.
Okay, here's the story from Minneapolis. We have a Minneapolis Public Housing Council that just passed a resolution that allows residents of public housing that need to go back to their home countries, they're refugees from those countries, they don't have to pay their rent while they're gone. They just pay a $75 administration fee, and then they can bug out to back home or go on the Hajj or whatever they need to do, but their apartment is kept for them, and they don't have to worry.
That is obscene. When you look at the number of legal American citizens, many of them veterans, that are sleeping in the streets and eating out of trash dumpsters, that is just obscene.
Well, but this is the new change, is that everything is available to anybody that's not from here, but if you're from here, you've got the sign out on the corner saying, need help for my family.
Well, you know, it's funny. We've got a friend here, actually my wife's friend, who is from Vietnam and came through the legal immigration system to be here and work here in the United States. Cannot get her son and husband out of Vietnam to get them here. And so I said, look, just fly them down to Mexico, teach them Spanish, and have them walk across the border into Texas, and the government will give them all kinds of free stuff.
Well, anyway. So anyway, yeah, I enjoy reading your site, and I listen to your show a lot the next day from this Blog Dog website that has you and a bunch of other shows.
Okay,
so it's a pretty handy deal.
Thank you very much for the kind words. We're running out of time, though. I'm going to have to let you go. Okay. Thank you for the call. We're going to switch over to Mark in North Carolina. Aloha, Mark. I hope you're prepared for the hurricane that's coming on in.
Yeah, well, I live all the way out west of the mountains, so I don't think it's going to really do much here.
Okay, well, good.
A little rain.
Good.
But I'm worried about family members who live in West Palm Beach. They're already evacuated up north into central Florida. You know?
Yeah.
So, well, what I wanted to say is two things. One is I don't know if you've seen it in New York City. They put a banner on the Manhattan Bridge of Putin, called him a peacemaker.
Yeah, we just reported that.
It's a slap in the face. That's a slap in the face against the neocons and who are really Trotskyites. You know, I've been studying on the neocon, and Alex Jones brought it up yesterday also. How they came after Stalin kicked Trotsky out and he went to Mexico, where he was eventually murdered in Mexico. A lot of his Trotskyite friends, partners, went with him, and they came to then they wound up coming to the United States, and they later on they wound up joining the Republicans instead and became what you call neocons, because the whole thing is they're globalists. They want to take over the world one way or the other, whether through communism or some warped sense of capitalism, and that makes sense. And and the other thing is that as far as defeating the Russians, I don't think we could do it conventionally, let alone with nukes. Nukes, nobody's going to win. That's it.
You're absolutely right about that.
Eventually, I think they kicked them.
You know, I reposted an article. I wrote this a while ago to the front page of WhatReallyHappened.com, and it's called Majestic Memories. And I wrote it after seeing the Jim Carrey film, The Majestic. And it's one of my favorite films, and you can read the article. But basically the whole point of it is I resonated with this movie on a couple of levels. First of all, persecution by the government when you're in the entertainment industry and you're saying things other people don't like. But mostly it was because I came from a small town just like the one that you see in the movie. In fact, my town was a little bit smaller. And I'm old enough to remember, those years right after World War II when it was a recent memory, and the special emphasis on Memorial Day. I knew people who had kept the bedrooms of their sons pristine, even though the sons were never going to come on back. And I got to see that, and it was an object lesson that while governments and bankers may wave flags and proclaim victory across the land, for ordinary people, everybody's a loser. It's almost hard to tell who the loser is and who the winner is, because everybody's life is eviscerated. Hopes are destroyed, hardship from the loss of a breadwinner or the heartbreak from losing a child. It comes to both sides. And that is simply something that ought to be in the equation of deciding whether there's going to be a war, but there never is. Because the wars are all about more wealth, more power, invading somebody else's country and stealing their money to keep our private central bankers happy for another few years. And mostly it's about plunging the world back into the debt slavery of the private central bankers. Because that's ultimately what leads to these world wars.
Yeah, I want to remind people, just in case, well, a lot of people probably don't remember this. During the Vietnam War, we were told, well, we've got to fight them over there, so we don't have to fight them over here, okay? Them being the communists, I guess, and the North Vietnamese army and all. Well, the North Vietnamese army wound up taking over Vietnam, and still the same people are in charge today. And yet today, these warmongering, neocon, globalist Trotskyites are talking about how we must defend Vietnam because of those islands here in the South China Sea in case China, decides to take them over completely.
I think the perfect answer to this propaganda, I'm sorry to cut you off, but we're getting short on time. I think Putin had the perfect answer to the propaganda because a while back during a press conference, a representative of the American corporate media tried to put him on the spot saying, would Russia want Alaska back so that they could have a headline, Russia planning to steal Alaska back. And Putin said, who wants it? We've got enough frozen, useless land in Siberia. And everybody laughed, and it proved that Putin really is a master statesman. And we've come to understand that all these countries we're told are coming to invade us had no such intentions of doing so. Iraq didn't even have nuclear weapons of mass destruction, let alone was going to attack us in 45 minutes. And we've been down this road before. We've got to kill them because they're coming to destroy our way of life. No, what's really going on here is we're seeing a war between the U.S. paper Federal Reserve note and the ruble and the yuan. And we're risking the incineration of the surface of planet Earth in this stupid argument over whose brand of ink and paper we should all be using for the next 100 years. And it's stupid because in this day and age of global instantaneous financial transaction and confirmation, there is no need for a single go-to currency any longer. But the leadership in Washington, D.C. wants to drag us all back to 1950 and the Bretton Woods Agreement, because they think that's going to solve all their problems. And it isn't, because you can't drag our awareness back to 1950. There's no button to push, there's no drug to put in the water that's going to make us forget all that we have seen in the last half century.
Well, these globalists better understand Russia is not Iraq. Okay? There'll be no shock at all. Okay? They're perfectly capable of not only going an even keel with us, but probably knowing the way that the army has been really purged.
Okay, we're getting some interference on the line here, and again, we're running out of time, so I'm going to have to let you go here and switch over to Steve in California. And Steve, you're going to be the last call today. What's on your mind?
Well, your caller talked about the abuse and the fraud and all the money being spent on the military-industrial complex, and I could say personally, when I was in the military, I remember looking over a lot of stuff I had to order parts because I worked in aircraft mechanics, and I had to, can parts off of aircraft, order parts, and I remember just washers, nuts and bolts and washers, how the cost, I was blown away by the cost. I said, is this right? For one individual small washer, I'd be paying like $2 to $3 for it, and a sheet metal screws or something. It was astronomical, the prices. And then I remember also when I got out, then they talked about the $700 toilet seat and stuff like that. So there is so much money being made in this industry, you know, and there's got to be a lot of politicians who own stock in these companies that supply the military-industrial complex, all the parts and stuff.
Absolutely, and all the Pentagon officers involved in weapons procurement, after they put in their 20 in the military and retire on full benefits, they get to double dip by going to work for those defense contractors as consultants, and they're just raking the dough in. It is an incredible scam at the expense of the American people, and that's why 57% of all the taxes you pay go to the military-industrial complex. And Eisenhower did try and warn us not to let this get out of control. And unfortunately, it did get out of control, and it's been joined by its illegitimate offspring, the medical industrial complex, the security industrial complex, and every time they get going, the same thing happens. More money is taken away from you. They get very, very rich. You're fed a diet of lies and bovine excrement to keep you in your place, and that's why we are a dictatorship.
Yeah. Last question. You had a caller yesterday that called in with a great little saying you were supposed to put on your website. I could not find it. Did you end up posting that comment?
Oh,
I
don't remember that I did. I got busy afterwards, and I think I blew it off. I'm sorry.
Yeah, please put that on there, because that was really, really good words of wisdom. I'd love to have that and copy it down, but I couldn't remember how it went, but it was actually very good, and I remember you commented on it.
What was it about? What was it about?
It was, I wish I could just copy down a couple words of it, but...
what was the subject?
About, I guess, courage, something with courage, having courage to stand up, and something with courage. Maybe if he's listening right now, he can call you back and give it.
Okay.
But it was excellent. It was excellent.
All right. Well, listen, thank you very much. We're going to let you go. We're not going to have any more phone calls today. I got a few things to talk about. We're coming up here on the end of the program, and also we seem to be having some kind of a difficulty with our phone lines where we're getting a lot of garbling and garbage and stuff. And to add to that, Roadrunner out here has been going up and down all day. I'm surprised we've made it through most of the show at this particular point. All right, so coming up on a commercial break, when we come on back, we're going to do a quick look back on all the top stories about what's going on here. And, okay, we'll be right back. America, welcome back to the show. And an alert listener wrote in the quote that was on the show yesterday: "When liars lead, only cowards, accomplices, and the enfeebled-minded follow." And yes, I just put it into the master quotes file, so I won't forget that one again. But thank you very much for that, for remembering that for us. All righty, let's see. A couple of stories we're closing up. Obama's considering more sanctions against Syria. We have to punish Syria because they're defeating our pet terrorists, and so forth and so on. The whole world knows what's going on. And I can imagine, I almost feel sorry for those White House slugs. And I understand they're paid very, very well to stand there with their hair on fire and insist they cannot smell any smoke. But after a while, they got to be like saying, I know I'm here to lie to the people, but can you give me something a little better to work with than this nonsense here? All right, let's talk a little bit about science and technology and space here. China is confirming that its first space station is now in a decaying orbit, the Tiangong-1. It's been up there for about 5 years now, but it was decommissioned and the crew returned to Earth, and China has announced the space station is probably going to be falling back at some point in late 2017, so we'll be looking for that to happen. Now, Russia's S-7 is getting ready to set up another spaceport. They have acquired the Sea Launch floating spaceport system, which went bankrupt over technical difficulties, but the S7 group has acquired this, and they're looking at setting up this private spaceport. Now, I don't think they're going to do it in California, all things being considered, but they're going to go on out and try and get this to work, and they just may be able to do that. Now, do you remember about a year and a half, 2 years ago, there was this giant meteor came down over Russia, and shock waves broke windows all over the place, and nobody saw it coming in. All of these asteroid spotting near-Earth orbit object trackers, they completely missed it. And about a week ago, they had another one come down off the coast of Australia. Nobody saw that one coming in. And apparently, this one, let's see, off the coast of Australia, September 16th, completely missed it. Nobody knew it was coming on in. So, another wonderful U.S. government program. Now, you know that there's been a big problem with the Samsung telephones exploding. Samsung has recalled that model. They've replaced them with another phone, which is exploding. Apparently, there was a very unfortunate incident on an airplane where one of these phones began smoking. Everybody panicked, thinking it was a bomb. And now, apparently, certain top-loading Samsung washing machines are shaking themselves into pieces with an unbalanced load. I think this value engineering and absence of product liability has gone far enough. There's music. Time for Claire and I to get out of here. We got a bunch of stuff we got to do. And we'll be back tomorrow, Friday, here on the Republic Broadcasting Network. The Lady Claire will be with us in hour number 3. You are all part of the independent media. Help educate the world. There is so much on the line right now. We'll be back tomorrow. Aloha, America.